Hello and welcome to Recovery Weekly, an interactive weekly program used to guide you, the family member of an individual with a substance abuse problem, through the process of recovery. I'm your host, Scott Kaling, joined as always by my co-host, Ian Koch. Ian is a licensed drug and alcohol counselor, as well as an internationally certified addiction specialist for NortheastAddictionConsultants.com. Thanks for joining me today, Ian.
Good morning, thank you.
Morning. Today I thought we'd discuss the topic of functional addiction and what it takes, or what it is, and how it infects the lives of many. And so I thought we'd start out by just defining exactly what a functional addict is.
Functional addict, good morning. I feel like that intro was really fast today.
Oh, sorry about that.
Functional addicts basically they're people who, and alcoholics as well, they're people who are able to manage their drug use and alcoholism while they're still participating in a lot of life. What happens is it creates a lot of guilt, a lot of shame. The drugs and alcohol start to rule their life, and usually these people are very functional. That's why we use the word functional addicts. But it becomes very difficult. And so examples, I guess, would be a better way of explaining it. You might have the businessman who is going to work every day, drinking, maybe having some alcohol in his coffee on the way to work, maybe drinking a little bit at lunch, keeping a flask in his briefcase after work, drinking, excess, passing away and again. I've actually who were in the market who were shooting heroin, going into the bathroom and rolling up the sleeve to their suit and shooting heroin and then going back out on the floor and selling and trading stocks. These are folks that, have families. Mom who is driving her kid to soccer practice. As soon as the kid gets out of the car for soccer practice, she opens up her purse and, gets out her drug of choice, whatever that may be. These are folks that are still paying their bills. They're still, active in the family, but, everything they're doing is this giant juggling act of being able to use drugs and alcohol and manage the family life, or the work life, or business life, or the combination of all of the above.
So even in keeping up that facade that everything's fine, they still must find difficulty, or the same things that other addicts or alcoholics go through, these withdrawal symptoms, or just basic irritability. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean they suffer from everything that what we normally call low bottom addicts go through. Where functional addicts have a lot of trouble with that, while they're at work, they're detoxing at work, so they're trying not to take days off. The problem with these folks really is that they can't get treatment. A lot of functional addicts are in big business jobs, like I was saying, stock market folks, and, jobs where they can't necessarily get out, doctors, lawyers, people who have to work that can't get away to treatment. They can't necessarily get away to see a counselor. So that's where this guilt and dishonesty and all this almost two lives, Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde type of thing starts to happen, and they really struggle.
Now, do they actually believe that they're the ones in control? I think it got
Absolutely. And they start to seek help when they start to realize that they're not in control. However, because the dynamic of these folks, the high functioning abilities that they have, they're able to manage their drug use and alcoholism for a really long time. And I mean, there was a gentleman that I met recently where he was smoking crack. Guy sells property all over the world. He lives in permanently in the islands down Dominican Republic area, but he also has property in Canada. He has property in the States, and that's what he does. He develops property, owns homes, sells homes. We're talking big business guy, but yet had a crack habit of, $500 a day smoking crack. And we don't think of stuff. Normally we think of an addict. Today it seems like the addicts are becoming younger, they're kids, they're stealing, they're robbing from mom and dad. But we forget about folks who are in big business, and they just have more money to get away with it, and they're able to hide it easier.
I see. Now, can something like weekend binge drinking constitute functional addiction?
Absolutely. Functional addiction almost starts at the younger age. High school. It's still working. It's still, people are still getting along. They're functioning. They go out on the weekends. They get hammered. They get all jammed up, and everything's good. They have a good time. They get on with their week. Absolutely, it can cause the addiction to develop. Absolutely. Are we good? I see what looks like we're breaking up a little bit. Are we all right?
Yes.
So as that develops, it goes two ways. Well, addiction really will go three ways. One, they will not become addicted, and they won't have the problems of addicts or alcoholics, and they'll, grow out of the phase and kind of get on with their life. Second route is that they will become full-blown addicts and alcoholics. The drug will completely take control of their whole life. They will start to lose everything. Or three, they will become functional addicts and alcoholics. Alcoholics, straight, full-blown alcoholics, usually don't start getting sober until they're in their mid-40s. Because it's legal, it's easier to get, it's more socially accepted. I mean, you can't just go to the, Sunday afternoon barbecue and whip out a needle and start shooting heroin. That's not socially acceptable. However, you can, drink beer all afternoon. So those folks, they tend to get away with it a lot longer before it really breaks them down. This can cause longer problems, more guilt and shame over the years, doing stupid things at family events, saying things to relatives or other family members or friends that they don't mean. And it all starts at that initial use. There was some survey that basically made every college student who drank alcohol out to be an alcoholic. And I so far disagree with that, just because kids are binge drinking in high school, that doesn't mean they're alcoholic. Yes, those behaviors, and in college, those behaviors look alcoholic, but it's not necessarily, it hasn't developed for all of them. Some it has. There are absolutely 18-year-old alcoholics and drug addicts, absolutely. But it hasn't developed for everyone, and go ahead.
You do believe that there is an experimentation phase, possibly in a teenage person's life?
Absolutely, and I would say it's normal. People don't want to admit that it's normal or believe that it's normal. I don't think that it's okay. I don't think that we should just accept it. No, that's normal behavior. That's fine. But God, anyone who watches this video, I'd be willing to put money on that in high school. And if they went to college, we'll say those early 20 years, that on the weekends, they went out and got drunk, a good portion of them. Smoked pot, sometimes maybe dabbled in other substances. It's not okay because you don't know if it's going to develop into the addiction. In high school students, in college students, we're talking about the functional addiction. And there are kids going to classes, drinking, going to classes and drinking every night, taking pills while they're in school. Adderall is a highly abused drug that's for attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. Adderall, Ritalin, I don't know if Celexa, there's something else. And And those drugs are highly abused and highly addictive. And the kids are getting them. They're getting prescribed, more than they need. But they tell the doctor they need more. So then they sell 3/4 of their prescription. And even that, Jenny, who's 19 years old, who realizes that she takes Adderall, and all of a sudden she's losing weight. She's not hungry. She's able to concentrate and study more. We've just created an addict.
Mm.
She's now getting good grades. She's pretty. She's skinny, but she's dependent on a little orange pill to get her through her day. And what people don't see in the closed door is what she might be doing to get the pill, or how she's actually using it, if she's crushing it up and snorting it or whatever it may be.
Either way, it's not by the prescription.
Prescribed use is like for the person it's prescribed. And now with the medications that you can get over the internet, through Canada, I mean, you can get anything.
Mm.
And a lot of these functional addicts are people using prescription pills, prescription drugs, and they don't see it. What did I see on Facebook the other day? Some mother.
And I think it typically is these housewives too that find that prescription pills are easier than anything to come by.
Well, I saw somebody's post, a friend and acquaintance on Facebook, and the post was something along the lines of a Vicodin, and I couldn't believe I saw it. Like a Vicodin and a glass of wine after work. Friday.
Just put it out there.
And then I saved that prescription from before, and it's like that's drug addiction, or not addiction, but that's drug abuse at its finest.
Right.
At its finest. These pills and things weren't meant to save up for a rainy day, but they're so widely, overly prescribed that people save them, and then it's like they know what it does, they know how it makes them feel, and I mean, I believe that there's just as much functional addiction out there as the low bottom street, addiction. It's typically with they're not necessarily smoking crack and shooting heroin, or they've got the money that if they're doing those things, they're able to do so much of it or manage it,
Now, yeah, I actually want to touch upon that point. Imagine in your profession that you may experience more resistance, say, from a functional addict, if you're trying to get them to quit, than the addict who is low bottom was willing to beg, borrow, and steal to feed their desires. You find that to be true?
Yeah, say that again.
I mean, in the case of someone who isn't ready to quit yet, a functional addict, say, who's still getting by and doesn't see the damage they're doing to their family, and feels like they depend upon it, and what are you willing to do for them? They must be harder to get through to than the guy who lost his family and, is on the streets again.
I mean, our last 3 calls to Northeast Addiction Consultants were functional addicts. Mm. Folks who, they were very quick to say, I haven't lost everything. I'm still living with the family, but my quality of life is not nearly as good. Whether somebody wants to stop or not, it's not the outside circumstances. And that's where addiction treatment for a lot of folks goes wrong, because they focus on the outside circumstances. I mean, it's not the outside circumstances. It's an internal condition. It's a state of surrender. Any addict who gets sober and who is sober now knows they got to a point where they were just too tired. They couldn't play the game anymore. Sometimes the game is much more intense or looks very different, but regardless, they couldn't play the game anymore. And maybe they got to that place with the help of a counselor. Maybe it was the help of outside circumstances. But regardless, it was an internal condition. It was an internal drive that got them into that place. You know, when you're dealing with ambivalence around people, and if you're looking at the stages of change model, there's pre-contemplative and then contemplative. I mean, a lot of people are pre-contemplative and contemplative. Do I want to? I don't know. It's bad. Yeah, I'm spending a lot of money, but like I make a lot of money, so I can afford it, and you know, or they're on the street, and the contemplative is, well, what else am I going to do? I have no one else to take care of me. I have no family. These people I hang out with are my friends. I don't know. I mean, it's the same, but it's different. You know, and that's, I guess, what I would like to really impress upon people is that addiction is addiction. You know, cancer is cancer. Heart disease is heart disease. Addiction is addiction. Many addicts starts, they can't stop. When they stop, they can't stay stopped. And it's driven by the emotional emptiness. You know, feel shame reasons. Some people say that's from childhood. Some people say it's from trauma. For me, it's neither here nor there. It's just there. It's a feeling of discontent. That's addiction. You know, some folks are rich. I mean, when I got sober, the only reason that, to be honest, I even was living in my apartment was because my parents were still paying my rent. You know, here I am, 23 years old. And the only reason I wasn't on the street is because they were paying my rent. As soon as they stopped giving me money to pay my rent, it was 3 months went by that I had to handle it on my own, and I couldn't do it. It was only 3 months it took for them to stop enabling me that I got sober.
Right.
Because I couldn't do it on my own, you know. But if I was loaded, if I had thousands and thousands of dollars in my bank account, who knows how long that behavior could have lasted? You know, who knows how long?
And
you know, it's the functional addicts that have more trouble getting sober than the low bottom folks who got nothing. Because money, let's face it, money makes the world go round. You know, money is not the source of our happiness and shouldn't be the source of our happiness. But we can definitely get a lot of things accomplished if we have money.
And it's the greatest enabler overall out of anything. I mean, that's the one thing that a lot of families don't have control over, is if their loved one is doing well at their job. You know, it's a terrible thing to say, but if a lawyer, doctor, whoever, and they're bringing in loads of cash, and you're barely even seeing it because you're skimming off the top. It's, you know, it's so hard to just say, well, you can't spend your own money, right?
Mm-hmm. I have a very dear friend who is a lawyer, and I always, whenever I'm talking about functional addicts, I talk about him because he's a lawyer who has 2 DUIs, and when he drinks, 50% of the time when he drinks, he can handle it, and he can have 1 or 2 drinks, but the other 50% of the time, he loses control. And he might say, I'm going to have 2 drinks, but ends up getting smashed, you know, and does stupid things and makes a fool out of himself. He struggles more than folks I've seen who are absolutely hopeless, worthless alcoholics who every time they drink, they can't stop. Because he's got that mental obsession at such a higher level where, well, maybe I can, maybe I can't. The problem is 50% of the time when he controls it versus the 50% of the time that he doesn't, he can't plan those. It's always rolling the dice. So if he goes out on a date and he has a drink, it's a full 50-50 dice roll. You know, it's like playing poker or something every time. And that's why he's gotten 2 DUIs. You know, who knows how much trouble he's gotten into that because of his job he's been able to skate out of, you know, or people have looked the other way and things like that, you know.
And I actually heard someone say this once before, that they had mentioned that they never themselves got a DUI, but in truth they really have about 4,000. And it just goes to show that they put themselves in these positions. They just happen to be so lucky. It's because we don't, as addicts and alcoholics, don't get caught. We forget to see that it's really is a problem. Well, my record's clean. I have nothing to show, to exhibit that I am a problem addict. But yeah, it's a major thing. But addiction can be described as a progressive illness where tolerance within the individual builds to the point where they require more of the same substance to produce a similar effect. And do you think it's almost inevitable that the functional addict will hit rock bottom given that definition?
That definition's dependence. So this is one of my own things that I've written about a little bit. I want to actually write about more. Is there's a difference between addiction and dependence. There's a difference between alcoholism and dependence. I put addiction and alcoholism in one side, and then I put dependence, so substance dependence, alcohol dependence, opiate dependence, all that I put on another side. The reason I differentiate them is dependence, the definition you read, is based on a set of criteria out of the DSM-4. The criteria explains behaviors. However, that dependence doesn't explain for a major part of the illness, which is when they stop, they can't stay stopped. Dependence also doesn't explain the emotional emptiness on the inside. Dependence explains exactly what you said. After a certain amount, they need, after a certain period of time, they need increasing amounts to get the same desired effect. And then there's also the withdrawal piece. When they stop using, they need more. However, dependence is set up that when the person stops, they stop. So then there's remission and some other categories that determine how long they've been stopped. But, I mean, the main problem is that the addict starts again. 6% of the people who walk into 12-step recovery stay sober for 5 years. 6%. And that's a full 5 years connected. Not that
right.
Out for 5 years, but that they get 5 full years of abstinence. Addiction treatment rehabs most. 1 out of 30 clients stays sober for a year. Because abstinence isn't the answer. Abstinence is the beginning of the answer. Dependence, so based on dependence, well, I don't even know what your question was anymore, but based on dependence, it's about stopping.
Yeah, I was going to say that if it's necessary for that, like a functional addict or alcoholic to hit rock bottom the same way, or is it inevitable? That was the question.
Is it inevitable?
You're broken up. Hold on 1 second.
Inevitable.
Just hold on 1 sec. We'll be right.
Yeah, I would say at some point it could be longer. My personal issue with the word rock bottom. That rock bottom. We good?
Yes, please continue.
You there?
Yeah.
Okay. So the thing about rock bottom is that just because like someone's hit a bottom doesn't mean that the trapdoor of that bottom won't fall out. The bottom always gets worse. So what might be quote rock bottom for me could be very, very different for you. And that's why we sometimes families, they'll look at their loved one and say, haven't you hit bottom? Or, man, I would think he's hit bottom. I think that was bad enough. But yet the person keeps going. Rock bottom is a really what's the word? It's a relative term. Rock bottom's a relative term.
Mm-hmm. It's subjective.
But yeah, subjective. But everyone eventually needs to get to that point of internal surrender, however that happens.
Beaten down, broken down, desperate. Yeah. But that's true. Well, I think we gave him a good overview of what it is to be a functional addict today, and I want to thank you for joining me. If you need help getting your loved one on the path to recovery, please call 1-800-723-1073 for a free consultation, or visit northeastaddictionconsultants.com. Please join us next week when we have Melissa Westerman from the Westbridge Community Services. And until then, we here at Northeast Addiction Consultants wish you and your loved one a safe journey to recovery.